91.3 WVST. This is Soul Logistic Radio Show, your number one source for conscious hip hop and soul music. Got the minister information, the straw that stirs the drink. Fat Tommy, what's popping, yo?
What's going on, Doug Evans? What's going on, Universe? You know, I'm going to have a quick update about Alabama, because I know I told everybody that's where they originally sold us and that our ancestors rose up that day. But now, I just want to highlight one thing. We were all incorrect in saying that the young man was a security guard. He was the co-captain, the first officer. So, Doug, you was in the Navy. That man has a lot. He was second in command on the ship.
Hey, look,
this is above a security guard, because you're talking about maritime law, which is actually a real thing.
True.
So he was second in command. So, again, I think America needs to remember this, that anywhere else in America, when we incite a riot or something happens, everything that takes place after that is charged to the people who started it. So when they're talking about the guy with the chair got to go to jail, no, he does not. Because had those white individuals not attacked the brother, then there would be no woman hit with the chair. So we need to be stop going so quick at we need to send us and justice. No. Justice dictates that man would have never done. No one. The women who jumped the white lady, that would have never happened. This all came in defense of the co-captain of the ship. This was all in his defense. So anything that transpired after they attacked him should be charged to the individuals who attacked him.
Word.
With that being said, I think I got a professional on the phone. I'm sure I have a professional on the phone. I'm not sure if he's going to be a legal professional, but I'm sure he can speak to the incident. We have none other, Doug.
Dr. Umar Johnson's on the line. What's popping, fam?
Peace and Pan-Africanism, brothers. Glad to be with you.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate having you, brother. I mean, this is something, this is big for us. And so, Doc, quick question. I hope you aren't offended by me calling you Doc. If you are, I'll change up. But Doc, here's the question. I know you're in town for the Gabriel Prosser or the Gabriel Uprising. You're going to be speaking over there. So, I did some research and I was checking out his uprising, and it was avoided because of the fact that two people wanted to protect their master. So they told that we were having an uprising. So then he escaped, and then the enslaved peoples of Norfolk turned him in for the reward. My first question is, how do you think that translates to where we are today, 123 years later? Because this was 1800, and now here we are 223 years later. And how does that translate?
Well, we have to look at the psychology of the snitches who exposed the plan, which would have given us the largest enslaved African revolt in American history. There were thousands of Africans who were prepared to join Gabriel in his march to freedom. And to your point, he was betrayed twice, because he was betrayed by the two house Negroes you mentioned. And then when he escaped on a boat to Norfolk, one of the black men on the ship identified him and decided to give him up because he wanted to receive the reward money that came with it. And lo and behold, true to form for white folks, they did not give him what he thought he would have gotten. So he didn't even gain what he thought he should have gotten by snitching on Gabriel. And interestingly enough, the white captain of the ship, it is believed, knew exactly who Gabriel was, but he was willing to turn a blind eye to the fact he was transporting the leader of the Richmond Revolution, but it was a black slave who turned on him. Now, to your point, we got to look at how deep the history and culture of sabotage and betrayal is in American African history. And as they say, old habits die hard. And I think that the essence of the traitor is the fact that they don't believe African people can ever become free. And so they have adjusted their goals in life to simply becoming the head Negro in charge. And to be the head Negro in charge, they are willing to destroy every other Negro on the plantation.
Well, here's a question, and no, not necessarily a question, but just a point of fact. I often say that when we have these ideas and plans, we need to execute them. Execution is key. And not to take away from the rebellion, but one thing that happened was it rained on the day of the original rebellion. So we decided to postpone the rebellion for a day. And I only bring that up to say that we have to sometimes execute through good weather and bad weather. No one would postpone a revolution because of rain today. So we just need to know when we see our opportunity at hand, no matter what the opportunity is in life, that we need to take charge of that opportunity at that moment and not postpone it. And a lot of times we postpone things as simple as, I'm going to just do that tomorrow, procrastination. And so we should learn from that rebellion and say we shouldn't postpone nothing else till tomorrow. But then, Dr. Johnson, I saw that you're in town to speak about the black pack, what black parents need to know about their kids going back to school. And so when I read that, I said, because I have a son who's heading off to college and a daughter who's heading off to freshman year in high school. What is it that I need to know specifically or in general about my daughter heading off to school?
Well, number one, for your child who's headed to college, they're pretty much out of that danger zone when it comes to being tricked up and trapped into special education and the disruptive behavior disorder conspiracy. So you don't have to worry about ADHD and learning disabilities being put on your child if they're headed to college. Your child who's headed to 12th grade, that child is also ninth grade is also largely out of the danger zone, because by the time you get to high school, if they haven't trapped you by then, they won't be able to, because it's very difficult to justify evaluating a child for special education for the very first time in high school. Simply put, if they made it from kindergarten through ninth grade or eighth grade, how could you justify or argue that there's a learning disability if they've been successful to this point? So it sounds like you've done a good job and both of your children are out of the danger zone. But the concept of the black parent backpack is a metaphor. Just as children put a backpack on and they put their books and pencils and pens and crayons and everything else in their backpack, everything they need to be successful in school. Metaphorically, we're calling this lecture the Black Parent Backpack, because everything they need to know to be successful as a parent is going to be covered at that lecture. And we do want the brothers and sisters in Virginia to know that that lecture, which will take place on Sunday, August the 20th from 4 p.m. until 8, that is a free event. It's absolutely free. They don't need tickets. They don't need to register. All they have to do is show up, and it's going to be held at 464 Burn Street, BYRNE, 464 Burn Street, BYRNE, in Petersburg, Virginia, at the Resiliency Hub, a Black-owned establishment. There's going to be vendors there. There's going to be a few other presenters. And, of course, I'm going to do the keynote as the certified school psychologist involved. So we're going to cover 504 IEP. We're going to talk about ADHD, the learning disability, autism, speech and language. We're going to talk about the various rights that black parents need to know about. We're going to talk about some of the federal laws that apply to school. And we're also going to just talk about some basic common sense things black parents need to know to make sure their children are going to be successful in school. So I'm looking forward to it. I haven't spoken in Richmond, Virginia in about 5 years, and this will be my first time ever speaking in Petersburg.
Well, Petersburg is going to be glad to have you. I don't know if you know it, but we are home of the oldest black community in America. That's here. We're also home to the First Baptist Church in America. We're also home of the largest land-owning black community after the Civil War. So, before the Civil War, excuse me. So you're coming to a very historic place. As it relates to African Americans. So
well, we also want the people to know too, not to cut you off, good brother, but we also want the people to know too. And of course, that lecture at 464 Burn Street on Sunday, August the 20th, 4 p.m., that's going to be in honor of Gabriel Prosser, who was still organizing his insurrection on August the 20th, which was planned for August the 30th. But as you already mentioned, was called off because of the weather storm. But the very next day, on August the 21st, I'll be in Druryville, Virginia at the Nat Turner Library celebrating the most successful slave revolution in American history. And that would have been the one led by the prophet Nat Turner. So I've been going to Nat Turner land on August the 21st for the past 13 years, ever since I discovered Baba Khalifa and the work he does there. So we're going to celebrate Gabriel Prosser on Sunday, August 20th in Petersburg. And then the very next day, we want the brothers and sisters to come on down to the Nat Turner Library in Druryville, Virginia, which is only 50 minutes away from Petersburg. And we're going to celebrate Nat Turner. So it's a 2-day revolutionary slave uprising weekend celebration.
Uprising is in the air. We got Brother Umar Johnson. He's going to be here in Petersburg. Was it 424 Burn Street? I believe that's the Heights, right, Doug?
Yeah, that's the Heights. Real quick, I wanted to ask him a question on, like, it seems like young people, my young people, like you said, elementary school, it's like when they run around the house, they want to be this. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a police officer. I want to be all this. But the more they go to school and the more they come back home, it seems like the less they want to be. Can you speak on that for a second?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And let me also give your listening audience my phone number in case anyone wants to reach me if they got issues with their children and need to schedule a consultation, or if they just want to text me for the flyers. 215-989-9858. I've had that phone number for 18 years. Feel free to share it with whomever you need to. Again, that's 215-989-9858. I always tell brothers and sisters, I do not answer the phone, but you can text message me anytime you want, as often as you want. But if you call, you will never get me. Learn how to text. To answer your question, number one, our children suffer from a lot of emotional abuse in the classroom. I would even argue that there's more child abuse in the classroom than in the home. A lot of these teachers, most of them who are overwhelmingly and predominantly middle-class white racist women, they say anything out of their mouth towards our children. And I can speak to this because I'm a school psychologist. I'm also a former school principal as well. And some of the things that they say to our children can really destroy your self-esteem, especially our black boys. And so when you're constantly being ridiculed, when you're constantly being told you're not good enough, when you're constantly being the victim of racial abuse, verbal racial abuse, you begin to lose your faith and your confidence in yourself. And my doctoral dissertation, my pre-doctoral dissertation, was on a relationship between self-esteem and academic achievement. And we did find that there was, in fact, a relationship. Self-esteem does impact academic achievement. And I think one of the mistakes we have made as African people is we have allowed the European power establishment to brainwash us into thinking that, gangster rap has more to do with academic achievement than self-esteem. That poverty has more to do with academic achievement than self-esteem. And nothing that the amount of money that's spent on a child has more to do with academic achievement than self-esteem. None of that is true. Self-esteem is the most important ingredient in academic achievement. And that's why we have to make sure our children have confidence and that they value themselves. As the most honorable Marcus Garvey said, whose birthday we celebrate Thursday in Harlem on the 17th, and I'll be keynoting that as well. Garvey said, quote, "Without confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have started." If our children show up to school believing that they can achieve, they're going to. But if they show up to school with any form of self-doubt, and this is why we have to watch how we talk to our children. Verbal child abuse is worse than physical child abuse. When you constantly insult your child, criticize your child, point out what your child did wrong, you are eating away at their self-esteem. And when you do that, it can spill over pursuits. It can spill over into how well they perform on the job, and of course, how well they perform in school. So a lot of this is verbal abuse. A lot of this is also the fact that our schools worship athletes and not scholars. That is another big contradiction in the black public schools. In schools in the neighborhoods where we live, we celebrate those who do well in football and basketball. We do not. A football superstar can be failing all of his major classes. He could be failing all of his major classes. He will still be celebrated by the principal. He will still be celebrated by the community. He will still be celebrated by most of the teachers. And the kid who's straight A's and B's might be in the top 1% in the nation on his standardized scores. He will be overlooked and ignored. And even if he is given attention, it will not be nowhere nearly as much attention as the athletes get. We as the Black community have to get our priorities in order, because we're sending a message to our children that academics doesn't matter as much as entertainment and athletics.
Okay, Dr. Johnson. So a question, because, everybody's talking, and every time we try to move one step forward, people is always trying to snitch us out, pull us back 2 steps by talking negative. So now the chatter in the area is, well, Dr. Umar Johnson has done this and done that, but what about the school he opened? He never opened a school. What happened? So I'm here not as an instigator, but just as a person wanting to be informed. What actually happened? And can you speak to that?
Absolutely. First, I would say it's interesting that people who have never built independent institutions have so much criticism for those who are building them. What we are doing with the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy has never been done in American history. There's no school built in this country by the African diaspora without any European participation, building real school buildings, not makeshift academic centers, but traditional school buildings with all Black money coming from the entire African world. It's never been done. This is the first school to do it. But again, to my point, we as a people are not known for building institutions. If you look at most of what we do think we own, it's largely financed by white people. So to build a school with no white bank loans, no government handouts, no white philanthropic support whatsoever, and then depend on that money to come from Africans from all 6 continents, because Europe is not a continent, so there's only 6 continents, that's never been done. We're the first to do it. The closest to it would be the schools that were built by the most honorable Marcus Garvey a century ago. But with that being said, to simply answer your question, we completed renovations on the Marcus Garvey Elementary School of the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy this past Thursday, August the 11th. So basically, that was just 3 days ago that we completed the renovations on the school. And I went live and did an entire announcement on that. There's been several postings all over social media that we finally crossed the finish line and finished the renovation. So what we're doing at this point is we have to wait to get our HVAC system inspected. Then we have to get our certificate of occupancy, and then we have to paint the building and do the floors. And then once that's done, we're going to have a community grand opening, which we're planning to do probably Kwanzaa week, but we might delay it until Dr. King Day or Black History Month. But we're looking at Kwanzaa week. And then we're also looking at an anticipated start date for next August the 17th, which is the Honorable Marcus Garvey's birthday in the year 2024. So we're right on time. I don't worry about the detractors, because there's no one who has done what I've done in our community in quite some time. No psychologist has ever broken down the mental health system and the education system and trained parents for free on how to protect their children like I have. I'm the most influential Black psychologist in the history of this country. So even if I never built the school, the work that I've done to save Black children from the school to prison pipeline, the work that I've done to empower Black parents with the knowledge that they need to go into these schools and protect our children, the work I've done to raise Black consciousness or motivate Black women to wear their own natural hair. And mind you, I'm global. I'm not domestic. I'm popular on all 6 continents, and I'm probably the most popular Black scholar on all 6 continents. There's no one who has done what I've done the way I've done it in our history. And to put the cherry on top with the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, that's just all the more the merrier. And once we get the first school open, you do know we also have the Frederick Douglass High School right across the street. We actually have a 4-building campus that we purchased. And then once both of those schools are up and running, we are going to look to build FDMGs all over the world, in Africa, in the Caribbean, Central South America, all 50 states, including Virginia. So this is going to be a worldwide mission. And my contribution to the Pan-African struggle is to simply become the first superintendent of the first truly African-centered global Pan-Africanist school district. We have never had a global Pan-Africanist school district, and that's what I hope to build.
Well, we right here with you. Is that school opening up in Philly?
It's in Wilmington, Delaware, 30 minutes.
Wilmington, Delaware. Okay.
Yeah, we plan to have a bus come from Baltimore every day, We plan to have a bus come from Eastern Shore, where Frederick Douglass is from. As you know, I'm related to Frederick Douglass. He and my 4 times great-grandfather were first cousins of the Stephen Bailey that he talks about in his autobiographies. That's Stephen Henry Bailey, my 4 times great-grandfather. And so we're going to bring a bus from Maryland's Eastern Shore. There's going to be a bus from Philly, Chester, Pennsylvania. There's also going to be a bus from Trenton, New Jersey, Camden, New Jersey, Dover, Delaware, and of course, Wilmington, where we're located. Remember, Delaware, Wilmington is where the 4 states all meet. So you have Southern PA, Southern New Jersey, Northern Maryland, and of course, Delaware. So we'll be the only independent black school in the country that's educating black boys from 4 states. We will be the largest independent black school campus in the country. We will be the only independent black school in the country that operates 2 modern school buildings, and we will be the first school of its kind built exclusively by the global African dollar in American history.
Well, that is kudos to that. There's nothing bigger than that, because I tend to go with you on the whole education piece, that we need to be, I guess, shouting about our scholars, about our scientists, about our future doctors, lawyers, and nurses. And yes, there's something to be said for those that entertain us, but those that educate us, such as yourself, should be at the top of the list. We should go back to our African traditions, which is to worship and praise the wise and our elders, and offer, I guess, I don't want to say gifts, but to take care of those who are taking the time to educate our children all day long. So we thank you. We look forward to seeing you this weekend. On tomorrow, we'll see you tomorrow in Petersburg, and then we'll see you Monday in say it again.
Druryville, Virginia. And folks can go to natturnerlibrary.com. natturnerlibrary.com if they want to register for the Nat Turner Tour. But for Petersburg, Virginia, that's absolutely free at the Resiliency Hub, 464 Burn Street, Byrne, Burn Street in Petersburg. The doors open up at 3 p.m. and the program will begin at 4. Dr. Umar will be speaking at 5, and there will also be a book signing, because my second book, Black Parent Advocate, The Art of War, for dealing with America's public and charter schools, that book has not yet come to Petersburg, because I have not yet come to Petersburg. Mm-hmm. So all parents in the Petersburg, Richmond area who do not have a copy of Black Parent Advocate, you need to have a copy. It's the only book in print specifically for black parents that teaches them how to navigate autism, learning disabilities, IEPs, psychological evaluations, 504s, intervention plans, the civil rights that apply to public school, constitutional rights that apply to public school, everything you need to protect your child, because they're going to come for them. It's not a question of if they're going to come for your child. It's only a question of when they're going to come for your child. And if you don't have a copy of Black Parent Advocate, you are not in a position to thwart the advances of the school system to try to special educate or medicate your child. Come through and get a copy of the book. But even if you can't get the book, come and hear the message, because that in and of itself will put you in a better position than you were in yesterday.
Thank you, Dr. Umar.
Go, but I got to ask one more question.
Sure.
I know we're about to run over. But here's my question, because my daughter, I just picked her up from school. She's going to the governor's school in Virginia. And she just pointed out to me, and I'd like your opinion on this. She was told today she can go to any bathroom in the building, any bathroom. So let's speak to that a minute.
Yes. Well, first of all, you can thank President Barack Obama for introducing that confusion into our children's minds. It was Barack Obama on the eve before he left office. This was one of his last acts of office, was to introduce gender confusion into public school students. He sent a letter to every school district in America telling them that they would risk losing their federal funding if they did not allow children to use the bathroom of the gender that they identify with. Now, why would you do that? Why would you introduce that kind of confusion into the lives of children? If you want to do it for adults, so be it. But I think all of us can agree that first graders, second graders, third graders, middle schoolers, even high schoolers, my doctorate is clinical psychology. Child development is all I've studied my entire life. And one of the things that you're taught in child development is that a child's identity, their sense of self, and their direction about their future is always in flux. That's what adolescence is about. Adolescence is a time when a child goes through the turmoil of self-identity. So if we know children do not have a solid sense of self until they get into their early 20s, and some people don't even develop a sense of who they really are until they get their 30s. Why would you introduce that type of sexual confusion into the schools like that? Barack Obama is largely responsible for that happening into the schools, and unfortunately, black people have not responded positively to it. We did not criticize Obama. We celebrated him like we did with everything else he did, while he built everybody up, while he ignored black people and pushed us to the back of the bus, literally on the back of the minority bus. But here's the bigger question. Why haven't black people come together to fight back against it? That's number one. And number two, given the fact that we are a $2 trillion economy that we can never forget about when we talk about solving our issues, why haven't we started building more schools? You know, we talk about the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. That's just 2 schools. We need schools everywhere for our children. And the fact that black people are still comfortable sending our children to schools where in many states now it's illegal to teach about slavery, it's illegal to teach about racism, but it is mandatory to teach sexual confusion, and yet and still we're still not building our own schools for our children. We are comfortable. We are absolutely comfortable with America miseducating and mistreating our children, because if we were more serious about black liberation or the best interests of black children over the long term, I'm speaking collectively, not as individual parents, but as a people, we should have way more independent schools than we do in America. And the fact that we have so much disposable income with very few independent institutions to show for it shows you how complacent black people are with being third-class citizens.
This is the last question. It's a hip hop program, so let's go here. We celebrating 50 years.
Hip hop is needing education too, because we're celebrating the 50 years of hip hop. And hey, I grew up in the hip hop era. I love hip hop. I remember my uncle who's a DJ. I remember when he first played Sugar Hill Gang. You know, what's that hit song from the Sugar Hill Gang?
Rapper's Delight.
Rapper's Delight.
Rapper's Delight, which is one of my favorite beats, one of my favorite personal beats of all time. But as it relates to the hip hop and the 50 years of it, you know, we also got to have a serious critical conversation about what hip hop has done for the black community, because financially it hasn't done much. Okay, let's just be honest. I don't know of a single hip hop artist who has built a relevant institution in any black community in this country. I don't know of a single hip hop artist who has built a school, independent. I'm not talking charter schools, LeBron James and Puffy. Those are government schools. They are not ours. The Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy is independent. We own it. I don't know of a single hip hop artist who has built an independent school for the black community, an independent bank for the black community, an independent supermarket for the black community, an independent hospital for the black community, or an independent manufacturing or distribution network for the black community to give our men and women jobs and provide our people with their everyday basic necessities. I don't know of one. In 50 years, 50 years, you're talking about the most popular and the most influential musical art form in the world. Billions and billions of dollars hip hop generates on an annual basis. Black music is one of America's largest export industries, and not a single rapper has given us a relevant institution in 50 years, while they have promoted misogyny, black on black crime, selling dope, going to jail, killing your brother. Why haven't we checked the gangster rap in the hip hop community? Until we do something about how gangster rap is negatively influencing our young people, and how hip hop has become nothing more than a minstrel show of modern day capitalism, hip hop will never go back to being what it originally was supposed to be about. I'm for the celebration, but after we do the celebrations, we also need to do some critical analysis to make sure hip hop does a lot better the next 50 years than it did these first 50 years.
I teach hip hop at Virginia Commonwealth University. And it's interesting that you say that, because it leads back to our very first statement about the Gabriel revolt. We had 2 people that initially sold him out because they wanted to protect Massa. And you basically said the psychology behind that is they don't ever believe we would be the leaders or the owners. So now when I look at hip hop, because I've looked at it critically, and when I look at hip hop, here's what I see. Those that were leading, especially in the beginning days of hip hop when it became commercially successful in the 90s, we again sold our people an art form out. The individuals that sold our art form, which is I'll call him right to his name, Puff Daddy, sold out the hip hop community by one, not telling the truth. See, that's what a lot of us have a problem doing, because when you run around and say you're the owner of a label and you're not, then that begins the problem. And so when you look at hip hop and you look at so many of them that were capping or lying from the beginning, claiming that you own Bad Boy when Bad Boy is a subsidiary of Arista and you didn't have any control over the money and you never produced a profit, and then run around and say then you own Ciroc, which now we find out he does not. It tends to bring me to the belief that a lot of us want to look like we are something that we're not, and then those that are in charge use that as leverage so that we can never go back.
But Fat Tommy, give you a little pushback on that, because hip hop started. He said one of his favorite records was Rappers Alike, and all they did was talk about stuff they didn't really have.
Yes, but that was a record. I'm talking about in real life. Puffy in real life said that he owned Ciroc. He went around and propagated to us that he owned Ciroc. He advertised and promoted Ciroc, and now they're putting him out, and they're just pushing him out of the picture. And we've seen this before, where people claim they own something. See, with him, it's different because he said he owned Bad Boy, and he didn't. And then he went on again to say that he owned Ciroc, and he didn't. So he has kids believing that he is an owner when he is not. So then when they tell him, here's where it really gets tricky. When they want him to do something, he can't not do it, because they say, well, then we'll cut you off and you won't own nothing. Then they'll out him to black community. So if you start out telling us a lie, they have that as leverage over you. They have the leverage to say, if you go and say this, I'm telling you don't own Bad Boy, and you was fronting all together. And you see that play out. How many times? Let's look at Kanye, who actually didn't say he owned it. He knew what was about to happen to him, but it came from us not owning. All our problems stem from lack of ownership and then perpetrating a fraud like we own something that we don't. All the long, me and you have talked about this several times, claiming to not want to be down with white folks, but rushing over there to them. When we start talking about the Grammys and the awards, we entered this hip-hop thing saying we wanted to be independent. And then in the 90s, if you look back, we sold all labels. They didn't conquer us. They didn't fight us. They didn't pressure us into ending the label.
We went to them and gave it up.
They opened up a checkbook, and we ran and sold from Russell Simmons on down. When you want to know where the black voice is, we sold it. Bob Johnson, we sold it. Russell Simmons, we sold it. Violator, we sold it. We sold everything we ever had. Master P, we sold it.
And I think that speaks to an issue that we as African people have, which is greater than hip hop, which includes hip hop, and that is black people, because of our conditioning through slavery and our reconditioning through black religion, has made us feel more comfortable giving power away than holding on to it for ourselves. We are the only people who do not have a vested interest in building and protecting power. Black people are more interested in collaboration and participation. We're happy to see our face on the album. We're happy to have our name mentioned. We're happy to receive the award. But when it comes to the true ownership, the true control, not just hip hop, but even of our community or the schools that our children go to or the politicians that we elect into office, we are never the power brokers, because black people have never been interested systemically in at least 100 years into truly controlling our reality. We were conditioned away from control on the plantation, but then we were reconditioned away from control by black religion, who has made us think that it is something evil to want to control things. It's something evil to want to have power, that all power belongs to God. So it's not something that we as human beings should ever concern ourselves with. And that's the most ridiculous indoctrination you can give a person, because you need power to do anything in this world. And the reason we suffer the way we suffer now, even with all the disposable income that we have at our fingertips, is because we have very little organized political economic power and very little organized financial power, very little organized economic power and very little organized political power. Without those two things, organized political strength and organized economic strength, you can't get anything done. That's what everybody is after in this country. The Chinese are after it. The European Jews are after it. The Arabs are after it. these migrants that's coming over and taking over New York City and Chicago, they're after it. Everybody wants political and economic power, and all black people want is Jesus and participating in somebody else's reality. And I ain't got an issue with Jesus or the black church, but any religion that does not teach black people the critical importance of developing political and economic power is an enemy to the community. I don't care what the religion is.
Well, we really, really appreciate you. We would love to have you back, and we could really dive deep into the conversation. There's so many questions I want to ask you, and it's amazing that you said your phone number hasn't changed, because I got your number, I want to say about 8-9 years ago, and when the young lady texted me the number to call, it came up. I was like, oh, I already have his number. I was like, I forgot I had it, and you haven't changed it. So he is true on, definitely his number hasn't changed. It doesn't change, and he does not pick the phone up. So if you want to get in touch with him, you definitely should text him. Other than that, give them your social media handles where they can find you.
Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Umar Johnson, Facebook, Dr. Umar Ifatunde. And just for the record, fellas, I don't really use Johnson anymore. I use Ifatunde, which is my Yoruba last name. Dr. Umar Ifatunde is how folks refer to me during these days. Yes, sir.